in saying, well, wait a minute. If you're picking a candidate for the Republican Party, shouldn't you be a Republican? Because that's your team.
Commissioner Beck, how are you?
Good. Great.
Great. We've been talking all kinds of different things today, but you're one of the Ada County commissioners. You were also in the legislature for some time previously. You've been in and out of politics pretty much your entire life here as an adult. And now, again, as a commissioner, you're dealing with a lot of things, but one big thing that has come up is ranked choice voting and the open primary initiative. Now, again, these are two completely different things, which people really need to understand. Open primaries and ranked choice voting are two completely distinct mechanisms within the political world. One is how you count votes, and the other is who can vote at a certain time. But you're here to help unravel this. You actually were one of the driving forces for closed primaries, because Idaho used to have open primaries. Then we went closed primaries. And now what's being advocated for is not actually a true open primary. It's more of a jungle primary. And just, why don't you just start?
Well, I want to start first by saying that what we talk about here is my opinions. It's not, I'm not representing the county, because we've not taken a position on this, and I don't think we really will, because we do the government, and it wouldn't be appropriate for us to take a position on it.
This is your opinion.
My opinion.
Your opinion, your
Rod
position.
Beck. This is Rod Beck talking, and I'm talking as me. I'm not talking as the chairman of the Ada County Commission. I wanted just to make that clear.
Right. So do I call you Rod, or
You
is
can
this
call me
Commissioner Beck?
You can call me Rod.
Okay.
Whatever you want. I don't.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. But yes, I'm very interested in that, and I participated with a group of other people, but I sort of led the charge back in 2006. That's how long ago it's been, to encourage the Republican Party to only allow people who were Republicans to pick the Republican candidate. And I even equated that to a football game, by the way. Would it be appropriate for, we're here in Boise, and so we have a lot of Boise State fans. And in fact, they're going to play Oregon now this year again. Both teams in Oregon, I understand. Would it be appropriate to have the Oregon fans pick the starting lineup for Boise State when they play?
Probably not.
Probably not.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com.
Well, that's what was happening in Idaho politics, because there was a lot of Democrats, because it was a private thing. You could go in and pick on the ballot. Well, I'm going to vote for the Democrat ballot, or I'm going to vote on the Republican ballot. And you did it privately. And we had an overwhelming amount of Democrats were choosing to vote in the Republican primary because they wanted to pick the most liberal Republican. And in some cases they were doing it. And so the party was very interested in, and I sort of led the charge to do that, in saying, well, wait a minute. If you're picking a candidate for the Republican Party, shouldn't you be a Republican? Because that's your team. Let the Democrats pick their team, and the Republicans pick their team, and maybe the Libertarians or the Constitution Party or whatever, they can pick their team as well. It doesn't make sense to have interspersion, mixing of who picks what, and then you get together with the real issues in the general election. And so we went through quite it was a big battle, and because there were some people in the Republican Party that didn't want it, they wanted to keep Democrats voting in their primary, right, and helping them pick the leader of the Republican Party. It took us a long time. We started in 2006. That's when I first presented the issues to the Idaho Republican Party at the convention, and they went along with it. They loved it. Because they had tried it before and couldn't get it through, and so they just gave up on it. Well, I said, well, we can do this. but we don't have to rely on the legislature to do it. We'll probably will have to go to court to get it done, which is what we did, because the legislature they at the time, because it was in 2006 and it was 2007 when we finally adopted a rule, and then it was at the 2008 legislature when a bill was introduced, and it was 2007, and it didn't get passed. And it was it wasn't a well-written bill anyway, but it didn't get passed. And so we then filed suit. The Idaho Republican Party filed suit against the state of Idaho, and we had a long, drawn-out process. It's federal law, federal issue, and we had a long, drawn-out process with Lynn Windmill was the judge, and he's a liberal judge. But I knew we were going to win on the issues because we were using the freedom of association. The beautiful United States Constitution has an amendment that provides for the freedom of association. The freedom of association also includes the freedom to not associate. And we didn't want Democrats voting and helping choose our team. And so we sued and we won. During that lawsuit, we found that we had to prove that the Democrats were actually voting in the Republican primary. And we had to prove to the court that was happening. So the way we did it is we took a poll, and we used Governor Otter's and Representative Simpson's pollster to do it. And in order to qualify to be even in the sample, you had to have voted in 2 of the last 3 primaries. So we were just talking to primary voters, and we found out during that, and then we'd ask them a series of questions, and we found out if they were voting. If we knew they were voting in primaries, but what we didn't know is how they voted. And so we would ask them, "How'd you vote?" And they'd tell us. And then if they said, "Well, I'm an independent," or "I'm unaffiliated," or I'm Democrat, or "I'm Republican," we found out that during that process, our pollster and our expert, we hired the head of the political science department at Duke University, and he told us he'd never seen so much crossover voting as he saw resulted in this poll. And he said there was as many as half the Democrats, and sometimes higher than that, voting in the Republican primary. And he'd just never seen that. Anyway, we won the lawsuit. The judge declared the Idaho law dealing with the Republican Party was a violation of our constitutional rights of freedom of association. And so that's when we wrote and I participated. In fact, drafted a lot of the bill that's currently law, where we could say, if you want to vote in a Republican primary, you have to be registered as a Republican. But we made it permissive. In other words, any party could do that, but we didn't want to force the Democrats to do that. So we made it permissive if the law is now, and that's the way it is right now. And that's why I think this open primary thing is not really very serious, because it's permissive. If any party wants to either close or open their primary, all they have to do is write a letter to the Secretary of State in November, preceding the next, in advance of the next primary, and tell the Secretary of State we want to open a primary or we want to close it. Then it would happen. But some people, this group, they're not really interested in open primaries. They want to eliminate the party primary, and that's what it does. It eliminates the party primary. And people don't understand that. This Proposition 1 eliminates the party primary.
And if I may stop you real fast.
Sure.
The distinction you're making is, it used to be that you had a Republican primary and a Democratic primary, and people did not have to pre-register with one party or another, and they could vote in, the Republican primary or the Democratic primary.
They could do that, and that's the way the law was until 2011.
Right. But what's happening now, or excuse me, what they're pushing for now, the initiative now, is that it's not that we're going to have a Republican and a Democratic primary. It's that everybody will be in one gigantic list, and you will just select. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, and that's why I say it eliminates the party primaries.
Right. And that's what it means.
It totally eliminates the party primaries, and it's going to be completely confusing, and it's going to, according to the Secretary of State, Phil McGrain, it's going to cost anywhere from $25 to $40 million to implement, if it's actually implemented. But it is really confusing. In fact, I'm calling it. In fact, that's what it actually is. It is a deceptive bait and switch scheme, because the sponsors of this, if they were really just interested in an open primaries, they could work within the party, or within the Democrat Party, or within the Republican Party, or within any party, and get that to be the policy of that party. That's how we did it to start out with. The Democrat Party, even they in 2020, they were irritated. The rank and file of the Democrat Party, they were irritated in 16 because we had a primary election in 16 for president, and they saw all these Republicans streaming to the polls, voting for the candidate of their choice. In fact, it wasn't Donald Trump; it was Ted Cruz who won the biggest share of the Republican vote in 2016. And the Democrats didn't. Why can't we do that? So they had to change, and so they actually had a closed primary for a couple of months. The Democrats did, so they could have their people go to the polls and vote one way or the other. And then they sent a letter back to the Secretary of State, said, no, we want to keep it open, because it was just so they could comply with the Democrat National Committee's rules.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
Sorry, a question for you then. So it appears that you're saying, hey, look, this is kind of a bait and switch. What they're asking for
No, it's not kind of a bait and switch.
Okay.
It is a bait and switch.
It's bait and switch. Gotcha.
It's a deceptive bait and switch, because, for instance, they bought a booth at the Western Idaho Fair.
Sure.
And it's ongoing right now. And they have a big banner, vote yes, Proposition 1, and then underneath it says open primaries. In fact, that is even the name of their group, open primaries. But that's not what they're really after. What they're really after is this ranked choice voting.
Okay. Now, before we get
That's why I'm calling it bait and switch.
Understood. Let's hit this. But just staying with the open primary just for a second, I have heard the issue with closed primaries is that you have this large group of voters, the unaffiliated independent voters, that are not registered for one or the other, that like the flexibility of saying, hey, if I see a good Democratic person, I'll vote for that person. Or if I see a good, Republican person, I'd like to vote for that person. As of right now, they don't get to vote in primaries, and they don't want to register with Republicans or Democrats. So the people that I've heard that are advocating not for ranked choice voting, but for open primaries, and as you're pointing out, it's just eliminating the party primaries. But people advocating for this are saying we need to, these people should be engaged or have the ability to be engaged or participate in the primary process, because in reality, they're essentially shut out.
They're not shut out of anything, because the primary is just that. It's a primary. It is to determine who's going to represent the party in the election. An unaffiliated voter can choose whoever they want to vote for in the general election. That's when it really counts as a general election. That's when you're actually electing somebody to office. But the primary is to pick your candidate. It's like I mentioned before. I compared it to a football game. How would it be if the Oregon State fans were picking the quarterback for Boise State when they play?
Right. Or somebody who doesn't want to pick a fan between Oregon State and Boise State. They're like, no, I'm not for either one, but let me pick the quarterback.
We don't want you to pick the quarterback. Right. We want the team to pick the quarterback. Right. Who's going to best represent the team, the Republican philosophy or the Democrat philosophy, if you will, right, or the Constitution philosophy. That's what what a primary is all about, is just picking the team. The actual election to elect the office is in the general election. That's when it happens.
And there's nothing stopping the unaffiliated from registering Republican. Like, there's no rule saying, hey, if you're unaffiliated, you cannot register for Republican and vote for Republican.
No.
Correct? Right. So, and again, this is what I've heard people say. They're like, hey, the unaffiliated are pushed out, but the unaffiliated have an opportunity to affiliate with a party, one party or another, whatever party they want, and participate in that election, the primary election.
Exactly. They can. In fact, I mentioned that we conducted a poll to determine if Democrats were actually voting in Republican primary, and we found an overwhelming number of them are. were. And they still might. Some people still, some Democrats still, well, I want to vote in this primary, so I'm going to go register as Republican. Then I'll vote in the primary, and then I'll change my registration back. That still happens. That does happen a little bit. But it's more honest and more open and more transparent to do that than the way it was done before.
And to be clear, there's nothing stopping people from doing that.
No,
there are no rules against, hey, look, you registered for the primary as a Republican and then you switch to a Democrat for the general.
There's no rule stopping that. It's now some of the party has tried to develop some rules, but it takes a state law to do that, and that's never happened. Right. And so the law right now is you can register. Now there are rules. You have to if you're registered as a Democrat, you have to if you want to register as a Republican, you have to do that before the filing deadline, which is in March, if you want to vote in the May primary. Now, if you're an unaffiliated voter, you can register as a Republican on election day if you want to.
So you can literally walk in and they say, hey, what ballot would you like? If you're an unaffiliated and you're like, today I'm going to vote on the Republican ballot. Today I'm going to vote on the Democrat.
All you have to do is check a box on your registration sheet. Yes.
And then are you then officially registered?
Then you're officially registered as a Republican.
And so then you can unregister.
If you want to do that, then you can change your registration later if you want.
Gotcha.
Yes,
so you have the opportunity. So they're really in effect not shut out.
They're not shut out. They just don't want to disclose it. It's not transparency. Yeah. And we found out during our polling, that the overwhelming number of unaffiliated voters are actually Democrats. That's the reason you see a small registration for Democrats.
Now, when you say they're actually Democrats, what does that mean?
That means because in our polling, if they said they were unaffiliated, we had a series of questions to determine: did you vote for Hillary Clinton, or did you vote for Bill Clinton, something like that?
Obama.
Well, of course, we did the poll in 2009, I think it was. So it would have been Obama,
right?
Because he was.
And so based on their previous voting history, you guys were saying, okay, these are actually Democrats instead of these are people independent that thought the Democrat was the best option of the two.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they didn't want to say they were Democrats. That's typically what was occurring. In fact, the interesting thing about it is we got the bill passed in 2011. In 2012, we had a presidential caucus in Idaho, and we were only allowing registered Republicans to vote in the caucus. And we had the caucus at the what was called the Taco Bell Arena. It's Extra Mile Arena now, I think, in Boise State. It was called Taco Bell Arena.
Okay.
Then. And we had about 10,000 people show up.
Sure.
And we would ask them. It was really a massive program, and we would ask them as they'd check in, "Are you registered as Republican?" The vast majority of them thought they were, but we had never had party registration. And so we'd say, well, no, you're not. They could have, because the bill was passed in 2011, and so they could have been registered as Republican. But they're in an odd number of years, it's municipal elections, so they had no reason to register as Republican. So coming to the caucus, we would say, "Are you registered as Republican?" They'd say, "Well, yeah, I'm registered Republican." We'd look it up. "Well, no, you're not. So let's get you registered," and then we'd register them as because you could do it and in fact you can still do it on election day.
Gotcha. Okay, that's the one piece, and you're saying deceptive bait and switch, because what you're saying they really want is not the primary shift and elimination of part of primaries, but they want the ranked choice voting.
They're using that as that's why it's bait and switch. They're using open primaries. In fact, even the name of their organization is Open Primaries. But that's not really what they're after, because they know they can get a better public perception of this is about open primaries. Well, it's not really about open primaries. What they really want is ranked choice voting.
Okay.
They know they'd have a hard time getting ranked choice voting because, A, it's confusing. Go down to the booth at the fair and ask the people there what the issue is. They don't even understand it. They'll say, well, it's about open primaries. Well, what's this other thing? Well, and they give you a little piece of it. You read that and you can figure it out.
Yeah, I'm more of an auditory learner. I don't really like if all of this made sense to me without somebody explaining it, I wouldn't need you here to explain this to me, right? Ranked choice voting then. Help me understand this because, again, I've talked to a lot of people about it. I would be lying if I said it made complete sense to me. And I consider myself an average intelligence, and I've really tried to find the answer. So explain ranked choice voting, why it would be too complex or unfavorable to market this initiative as, we want ranked choice voting instead of open primaries.
Well, I'll give you one good example. Ranked choice voting is, again, they eliminate party primaries.
Right.
And so say 6 people decide they want to run for the legislature.
Right.
Say they want to run for District 14. That's where you live. Okay, 6, 7 people say, I'm going to run for that. And they all file. But when they file, all they can, if they choose to, put an R, D, or an L, or a C. Sure. But they don't have to. But they can put a little indication next to their name. And then it goes out, and I call it a jungle primary because it's you don't really know who you're voting for or what you're voting for. Because as you know, the legislature, particularly in more urban areas, which we are in, it's difficult to know who the candidates are because they don't have the money to be spending all TV and on radio and do all the broadcasting. Now they put up yard signs and they try to do the best job they can, but people pay attention to the larger races, the governor's race. They pay attention to the congressman's race or the U.S. Senate, or in this year they pay attention to the presidential race. That's who they pay attention to because that's who's on the news. So they don't really know their candidates very well at the lower level on the ballot, which is be the legislature or the county offices. And so it's hard for the people to understand that. That's part of the reason why party is so important, is because if you pick your candidate, you sort of have an idea, well, I'm going to vote for the Republican. I don't know who this is, but I'm going to. And that's what ranked choice voting is trying to eliminate. They don't want you to do that. They want you to guess, I guess. And so of these 10 people that are running for the legislature in District 14, the way this law is passed, 4 of them, of the 10, if that's how many there was, 4 of them will advance into the general election.
Now, to get to when we go from the 10 to the 4, everybody rolls in, they mark, I want this guy, and then the top 4 with the most votes, right there, no problem, nothing, no runoffs or anything. Those 4 people just advance on. That's a simple, classic vote.
Those 4 people, the way the law is written, 4 people, it's jungle primary. 4 people will advance. The highest 4 votes will advance, no matter a party affiliation.
Gotcha.
Highest, you could have 4 Democrats advance. You could have 3 Democrats and 1 Republican. You could have 4 Republicans. It doesn't matter.
Got it.
Those 4 will advance into the. In fact, California has a jungle primary. So does Washington have a jungle primary. They don't have ranked choice voting, by the way, but they do have its jungle primary. And so the biggest races in California are between 2 Democrats in the general election because no Republican can even make it through that jungle primary. And the same thing in Washington.
Here we go. Here we go. You know what I need? I need to get like lapel mics because so you could just the arms everywhere.
Oh yeah, you gotta.
I'm constraining you here.
Speak with hands.
Yeah, right. I love it. Okay.
But anyway, yeah, that's what happens is
keep talking.
The four people will advance to the general election, and then people will say, well, I think. Matt.
There it is.
I think Matt ought to be. Matt's my number 1 pick.
Great.
But then you also pick who your number 2 pick is.
Sure.
And
this is the real kick in the general election. You pick. This is the whole rank. You pick your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th pick.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And if nobody of the 4 gets a majority of the vote,
so you got it 50 plus 1.
That's right. If no one gets a majority vote, then they drop off the lowest one, and then it's a computer analysis. Well, let's see. Who was the 2nd pick?
Okay, so say I was the 4th place candidate. I got the fewest number of 1st place votes. Then I'm off the ballot and they eliminate me as a first place vote. And they say, okay, everybody who voted for Matt as first, what was their second vote?
Yeah.
And say,
what was your second choice?
Right. And then all of those votes, the second place votes for me, the fourth place person, filter into the remaining three people in a appropriate manner. They're like, okay, the second place, the people that voted for, let's say there were 1,000 votes for Matt as first place. And there are 300 votes for you in second place, 300 votes for Steve in second place, and 400 votes for Tom in second place. Then Tom gets 400, you get 300, and Steve gets the other 300. So they filter in there. And if that, at that point, gives somebody the majority, 50 plus 1.
But it's only the majority of the remaining votes, because here's what happens. In fact, that happened in Alaska. In Alaska, they adopted ranked. In fact, they're talking about taking it away now because of what happened. Same with Maine. The states that have implemented ranked choice voting are really struggling with it and trying to maybe repeal it. Because what happens is in Alaska, they had this ranked choice voting, and the first round there was 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat that made it to. They didn't even get 4. I don't think they had 3.
Okay,
and the 2 Republicans were Sarah Palin and a guy named Begich, and then the Democrat. Well, Sarah Palin got by far the most votes in the first round, but the people that were supporting Begich, they didn't put in second place. They just voted for Begich. So their vote was eliminated. And so for the first time since statehood, Alaska has a Democrat congressman because
they didn't put in Sarah Palin as number 2.
They didn't put in Sarah Palin as number 2.
Okay, so Sarah Palin has the most votes
to start out with.
And then how did the Democrat get additional votes?
They didn't get additional votes. Everybody just kept voting for her. The Democrats put her in as their second choice, as they put the Democrat in. And so when they eliminated the Begich guy, then the second place, there was more votes for her than there was for Sarah Palin for second place, because the Begich people didn't vote for anybody for second place.
Okay. So they only look at the remaining votes. They don't look at.
But yeah, eliminate your vote. If you don't put somebody in for second place, then your vote's eliminated.
Okay, so then the second place votes for Sarah Palin were not as many as the second place votes for the other person.
Yes,
that's a problem.
Well, sure, it's a problem because your votes are actually eliminated. If you only want this person, if you only want Begich, see the way. Or Palin or whomever. See, the way our election system works now, you get to pick who you want to vote for. You pick who you vote for, and if they don't get enough votes, then the other guy wins, or the other person wins. But this ranked choice voting doesn't do that. Your vote's eliminated if you don't choose a second place, then your vote's eliminated. It doesn't even count.
Okay, but here's a question for you. Okay, so you have say, and again, I'm sorry, this doesn't make sense. 100% sense to me. A little confusing. So you have Sarah Palin, and she gets the most number 1 place votes, right? And then you have Begich, and then you have the Democrat. Begich got the fewest number of first place votes, so he gets eliminated. And then isn't there an additional filtering of second place votes from somewhere else? Because essentially you're just left with these 2 candidates, right?
But you're not. That's a technicality because you only cast a vote once.
Okay.
But you rank them and how you want them ranked.
Okay.
And so if you don't rank them right, if you don't manipulate it well enough, like if they'd have taught people, you need to put Sarah Palin in for your second place, or you need to put Begich in for your, it's an education thing. Well, they didn't know that, and they didn't, and that's why it's confusing. See, because people are used to just voting for who they want to win. And that's what happened up there. The Begich people didn't vote for Sarah Palin for second place. Now, if they'd all done that, if they'd figured it out, then they'd had a different result. But see, it's just too confusing, and that's why it is a bad situation. But another situation.
Oh wait, I think I got this. So the Begich people, that voted for that voted for him didn't put Sarah Palin as number 2, but some of them did put the Democrat as number 2. And so when the first
may have been, I don't
got eliminated, that pumped more votes to the Democrat.
Could have been. I don't know exactly.
Gotcha. It doesn't matter. But the point is that was kind of the issue.
Well, kind of the issue was Sarah Palin got the majority of votes to start out with, and then the Democrat won it because they didn't all they hadn't all done their ranking correctly,
Gotcha.
and so the way they wanted it.
Gotcha.
The majority of people in that election wanted the Republican, but because of this ranked choice thing,
Understood.
They didn't get the Republican. They got the Democrat, and that's what they're counting on, by the way, and that's why I'm calling it a deceptive bait and switch scheme.
Okay, so who does this benefit? So this is ranked choice voting, and this is what the people that are running for open primary want. Who does ranked choice voting benefit?
Well, I think it benefits the progressive liberal people more because it gives them a chance. Like in Alaska, they've never had a Democrat congressman, so it benefited them.
Okay. And so what you think people are hoping for is, hey, it will give moderate or liberal people in the state of Idaho a better shot at gaining office.
I think so, because they don't have that big of a shot in some of the legislative districts, and it's the same with the Republicans. The Republicans in District 19, where you live, they can't win because there's way more Democrats in that district, and people generally vote their party in these legislative races. Not always, but generally.
Okay, I've heard this both ways. In that, in fact, you even identified, hey, look, in California with the jungle primary, no Republican has a chance because it's just the 2 Democrats. But then
they don't have ranked choice voting. That's the difference.
So again, my apologies. 2 different issues.
2 complete different. They have a jungle primary, and then the top two candidates
out of like 30 or something,
out of 10 or 12 or however how many.
Gotcha.
Advance into the general election, and it's only 2. So you pick which one you want in the general election. That's not ranked choice voting. They have jungle primary in California. They have jungle primary in Washington, but only 2 people advance to the general election.
So then there's no ranked choice. It's
That's
just
right.
whoever. Okay, so if they eliminate, if they're like, hey, we're only in Idaho, if the open primary sent off just 2 people, we wouldn't have the ranked choice voting portion of it either.
No.
But they're sending off 4 people, and then they use the ranked choice voting to figure out with an automatic runoff who wins.
But when you talk to people who support Proposition 1, all they talk about is open primaries. They don't talk about ranked choice voting because it's too confusing and it's not very popular. That's the reason they're trying to tie the 2 together, and why they're only calling it open primary a proposition, because it's not about open primary. It's about ranked choice voting, and that's the reason I call it a deceptive. It's a deceptive scheme.
And as you're identifying,
bait and switch. It's a deceptive bait and switch scheme.
And as you're identifying, you could have an open primary, but only advance 2 people, which would eliminate the need for ranked choice voting. So literally, you could revise it so you eliminate.
And
this
there is a
piece.
process. If the people, if they were really about just open primaries, one, they'd have done a proposition that just had open primaries, but that's not what they're after. They're after the bait and switch to get the ranked choice thing. You could, and even under current law, if you could find enough Republicans in the governing body, which is the State Central Committee, to say we're tired of this closed primary thing, but they're not. They like it. So let's change it. All they'd have to do is get the leadership of the Republican Party to change it. They write a letter to the Secretary of State, and it's changed.
Gosh, man. Okay. This is making more sense now. I still don't quite understand why there's so much push towards this, aside from it gives people a slightly different shot, like in the case of Alaska, get that. But it seems like a whole lot of effort for that. And look, Matt's a dum-dum, so I don't quite get it. Like, I'm not really good at politics, so maybe people are like, no, this is what we've been waiting for, like this. And I'm hoping to have somebody on that is in favor of ranked choice voting and can explain that. But from what you're saying, it's like, okay, if what they really want is open primaries, well, then they could just have open primaries.
There's a process for that, but that's not what they really want.
Right.
What they really want is ranked choice voting, and it's not popular, and it's confusing. And it's further confusing because in District 14, you have Eagle, and Gem County. So we have two different governments counting the votes. So how are you going to figure that out? How are you going to rank them? You have to wait. It'll all be a computer process. You'll have
because Gem County and Ada County would have to start collaborating.
Well, not only
within the district boundaries and whatnot.
They wouldn't necessarily collaborate. What happened is Gem County count the votes, and then Ada County would count the votes, and then they'd have to merge them together.
Put them together.
Merge them together
right.
and see which the ranking was. It's just confusing, and that's part of the reason that McGrain said it's going to cost between $25 and $40 million because of all the complexities. Because it's not just Eagle and Gem County. There's in Kuna, you have Kuna, which is in Ada County, and they're hooked up all of Oahe County and part of Canyon County. That's one legislative district. So how are you going to count and rank all those votes?
Now, mind you, in existence right now, they still have to share the data with each other because you still have to elect somebody for
But that's easy. Candidate X gets this amount of vote. Candidate X gets this amount of vote. Which one got the most? That's easy.
Right.
But how are you going to rank them?
Yeah, no, you're making a good point.
How are you going to rank them? You have to rank them, and then it's crazy. I mean, yeah, it can be done, but it's confusing, and it's not necessary. And I think we have a pretty good system right now. We don't need to have this convoluted ranked choice voting. Again, Proposition 1 is not about open primaries. They're trying to tell you it is, but it is not. It's about eliminating the party primary and having a confusing ranked choice primary. That's why I'm calling it a deceptive bait and switch scheme.
Gotcha. That makes sense to me. What you're saying makes sense. And again, I don't know the other side of it, which I'm really interested in finding out. So I'm hopeful that I can have somebody else on to talk about that.
I'll give you a proposition.
Okay, go.
You get somebody in here talking about it, they'll mainly talk about open primaries. They won't talk much about ranked choice.
Well, the good news is I get to ask them. And I will be clear, like, hey, I'm going to ask you about both of these aspects. So, we'll find out if there's a problem talking about it. But Commissioner...
Well, I think that's what you'll get. In fact, this week, if you want to go see a pretty good discussion, the City Club of Boise, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not that popular. I don't know the City Club. No.
Okay, City Club of Boise. They're having a discussion this week with Hiram Erickson. He's one of the spokespeople for ranked choice voting, but he only likes to talk about the open primary thing. He doesn't talk much about the ranked choice voting. Listen to the podcast I mentioned to you. You'll hear that. Okay. And you're going to have Raul Labrador. The two of them are going to be talking about the various benefits of one of the systems over another. Right. That's going to be at the City Club this week.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. I will actually check that out.
Check it out. I think it'd be a good discussion to have. I'll be there. Not this week. It's I think Monday. I'll let you know.
City Club. Yeah.
City
Club.
Just
let me know.
Yeah.
Listen, we were talking for like an hour beforehand. I know your time is limited here.
Yeah.
Is there anything we've missed with regard to this Prop 1?
No, I don't think there's anything we missed. Just the people of the state of Idaho ought to understand. I hope they understand it, and I'm thinking more and more people are. Is that Proposition 1 is not about open primaries, like they're saying. It's a deceptive bait and switch scheme to get imposed on the people of the state of Idaho ranked choice voting. That's what it's about.
Gotcha. Commissioner Beck, thank you for coming in today.
Nice to be here with you. Good to meet you. Nice to be here with you.
Let's do it again.
We can do it again on other topics we talked about. We have a lot to talk about.
Plenty of other awesome topics. Again, thank you for coming today. We'll make it first of many.
Absolutely. Thank you.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com.